Hi, folks. Welcome. Give folks just another moment or so if they're joining us. We do have it recording right now. And show up however you feel most comfortable today. If you're eating lunch in the background, video on, video off, whatever works best for you. Give it another moment or so and then we can jump in. And just so everyone knows, we'll share the slide deck as well along with the recording. So if you did have any these as a reference too. All right, so let's jump in. Folks can join us late as they arrive. We're really excited. I don't know if you can see both myself, Katie Belshaw, and Michael Vickers beside me. I don't know what our video looks like for you, but we're both here. So I, Katie Belshaw, she, her, lead our programming at BAP. And Michael.
Hi, everyone. Michael. Hi, Joy. ED, Executive Director of the Brampton Arts Organization, work really closely with Katie on a lot of the programming. Yeah, really excited to be here and talk through all of your ideas. We'll obviously give a really sort of thorough overview of everything. I think we recognize that this is like a little more complicated than some of our other proposals. So that's why we hope that, you know, this can be a way for us to kind of walk through everything. And then hopefully there's some time at the end too, to just sort of talk through ideas. Whoops. You know, and have like a real time sort of chat about maybe things that you're thinking through, questions you have, what we think that the selection panel will be worth looking for. Yeah, so thank you for making time. I think it'll definitely be worth it.
All right. So we'll take a look at our agenda here. Like Michael shared, we are going to go through the parks themselves, the program overall. We've got some ideas. Year's project, and I see Aditi is online. Hello, Aditi, who led some programming with Parkscapes with us last year. So maybe even Aditi, if you would be open to sharing when we get there what your project was. We'll go through some of the program expectations, selection criteria, and then have some time to go through the application itself. And then because we are a smaller group, we do have probably some time at the end to talk through people's ideas and other questions as they go. So feel free to use the chat as well. We're on one computer today, so we'll do our best to see what's going on with chat, but feel free to unmute yourself too in case we miss something. Okay. So what is Parkscapes? Parkscapes for us started last year. It started with a project with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority where we got a grant, and we are continuing that grant with them throughout the next 2 years. And this year we were also really lucky to receive an Ontario Trillium Fund grant as well to further support the Parkscapes programs. So really what it is a seasonal, so summertime, community engaged public arts program that activates different Brampton parks. So last year we were just in Eastbourne Park. This year we're excited to be in Eastbourne again. And then we are also in Chinguacousy Park. And then we have a sort of choose your own adventure park, be it Mount Pleasant, Loafers Lake, or I think we said Eldorado Park as well. This year we have a theme for Parkscapes. It is really quite open and we invite you to interpret this as it makes sense to you. We're calling it Roots in the Park, so inviting yourself as artists to explore movement, pathways, migration, journeys, routines, really thinking about shared space, shared public space, what it means to come together in community through your art practice. So we're open to all kinds of art disciplines, interdisciplinary work as well, really whatever your practice is and what you'd like to bring into community and see in Brampton. The application deadline is coming up in a couple weeks, Sunday, March 15th. So if you did have any questions following this, we invite you to reach out to us and let us know. As I mentioned, we have 3 park sites this year, which is really exciting, growing from 1 last year to 3 for this year. What we'll do is I've got images for each of these park sites, and there are some different parameters per each park, and that's sort of due to the granting and funding that we've gotten for each site itself. So we'll walk through those together, and if it gets confusing, feel free to let us know and we can talk it through. So the first site is at Eastbourne Park, and there is some flexibility there to be working within that surrounding area, which is kind of around Bramalea. We've also got site 2 at Chinguacousy, and then site 3 can be whichever park amongst these that you would like, Mount Pleasant, Loafers Lake, or Eldorado. So perhaps you're local to one of these neighborhoods and one of them speaks to you, or you have a water-based project and you'd like to be at Loafers Lake. Mount Pleasant is right at the library. Eldorado is super busy. So 3 exciting opportunities there. So overall, across all of the parks, there are some program requirements that apply to all of them. All of the programming that you would be doing within these parks would be free to participate in. It's open to the public, so everybody can come and drop in, all ages. It has to be arts-based in any medium, so visual arts, dance, theater, music can be in any practice. It has to be participatory and interactive, and that can look like many different things. And then as well, that it's an accessible and an inclusive program and folks feel welcome and engaged to come and participate across any age, ability, etc. Okay, so specifically, we'll pause here to talk about Eastbourne Park. So this is in the Bramalea neighborhood, located near Torbram Road and Clark Boulevard. And then I've got, you can see here, it's within Earnscliffe Park, and you see that red star up towards the right of where it is. And then a couple images here as well. So this is a fence installation that's gone up for a tiny forest project that the TRCA, Toronto Region Conservation Authority, is working on. There's a couple more images of this fencing here and a hand for scale. So the TRCA is looking for some beautification of this fence along with programming. And in terms of what the programming would look like in Eastbourne, in particular for this site, we're looking for 2 separate but related events that tie into the theme of Roots in the Park, which we just spoke about. And so in addition to these 2 plus events, you would be leading a final celebration that could be a performance, that could be an installation, a temporary installation, or some kind of gathering. It could be as well an opportunity in which folks can engage in across multiple ways through dropping in, participating in different aspects. It has to be for general all ages and multi-ethnic audience, can include 1 or more art forms. And then in particular for Eastbourne, I'll just go back to the fencing here. In addition to that programming, you would also be looking at this fence structure. So I wonder, Aditi, if you wouldn't mind speaking about how you worked with the fence last year in Parkscapes.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. This morning I went to the site knowing that we are going towards warmer days and snow is going to. So this is the picture I just shared in the chat. I would like everyone to have a look at the picture. And what I did was I used acrylic sheets.
Anything in the chat? Actually, I do have some images of your fence coming up, I think.
Did you get it now?
No. Oh, here. Yeah.
So I thought since it was a Diwali installation project, so it was supposed to be there for a certain amount of time. I don't know what we are planning for the upcoming ones, but I thought of material which would, sustain at least a couple of months with weather and winds both ways. So I chose, in this case, transparent acrylic sheets, and we used outdoor mural paints and stencils, which resonated with the concept of Rangoli and the festive spirit of Diwali. So that was part of community engagement where people from the neighborhood community came and did these stencils. It was a collaborative project. Each stencil had maybe around 2 or 3 families working together on one of these acrylic sheets. And my next challenge was winds. So what I did before installing them, if you see closely, I use these tag kind of locks. I don't know what we call them.
Zip tie?
Yeah, those locks. I just heated and made hole according to the I checked the distance on the site when we did the community engagement. After a week, I went there and then I installed. And I did some holes through the sheet too, so that when wind blows, it passes through and it doesn't break down. So these are certain technical areas which I worked on. And then this was a panel of 12 sheets on the front side of the fence. And the second element was, you can see in the back there are solar lights attached to it. So a lot of them are damaged now because of snow and things. But these worked well during the night. I have night shots too. So this was part of reflections and shadows and light and everything coming together. So this morning I realized that it was a nice project. I got what I imagined. And yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Aditi. It's nice to see that it's still there. So that was a project that we did like September, October of last year, and then it's still there, which is kind of nice. It is meant to be a temporary installation, so you don't necessarily have to think about it as other artists that maybe are in this call right now. It doesn't have to be something that's long standing, but Aditi's just happened to be, and I think that's quite nice in the end. And then as Aditi was sharing, last year's theme was around Diwali, although this year our theme is a lot more broad, just in terms of roots in the park. So thinking around connection, coming together, pathways into the park. So that would be the broad theme that you could think of for that fencing. Okay, so lastly about Eastbourne. This is a project that overall can take place between June and August. And while it is a project taking place in the park, we had some of the artists last year. We also worked with an artist, Sharda, to do programming in Eastbourne. And Sharda did some workshops at, I believe it might just be called Eastbourne Recreation Center, although it could be called Earnscliffe. I might be getting that wrong. But you could do programming and rent out rec centers and also do the programming in the park if you need that indoor space and then the outdoor park activation. So that could be an option too. So for this project in Eastbourne, you have an artist payment, so your fee, how you would pay yourself, of up to $4,500. That could be as an individual artist, an organization, a collective. You can have collaborators. It doesn't just have to be one person. And then you would have up to $1,200 for supplies, materials, and equipment rentals that you would need. So that would look like acrylic sheets for the fencing, paints, whatever you're using to do an installation. Okay, maybe I'll pause here if there's any specific questions for Eastbourne. Otherwise, we'll keep going to site 2.
I would like to add one thing that whosoever are the selected artists, they should go to the site once prior to starting their, community engagement project. That is something I lacked on this time. So I was there on the day of the project. I should have done that, my site visit before to know about how to.
Yeah, that's a good and important tip. Thanks for sharing that for any of these sites. Doing some of the research on the parks, the community themselves, who lives there, maybe some of the history of the park. All of that information can really inform putting together a strong proposal, and the folks will get to the selection panel, but it will be made up of Brampton artists, so folks that do know the area. And so that could be a way that your proposal could stand out if you have some of that knowledge. And it's clear that you've done your research, like Aditi said, to make your work stand out.
Okay, everyone, it's over to me now, and I'm going to speak a little bit about Chinguacousy Park. I mean, just to kind of validate what you were saying, Aditi, like I do really encourage folks, even perhaps before you submit an application, to try and visit the site, obviously for inspiration, but also just to get a bit of an understanding of what it actually is like to be there, and sort of what's in the area. So for site 2, Chinguacousy Park. Oh, and then we'll speak to site 3 as well, which is, as Katie said, a bit more of a choose your own adventure. So we have Mount Pleasant Park, Loafers Lake, or Eldorado Park. So I'm less familiar with Eldorado, but Katie mentioned that it's like very busy. Obviously, Mount Pleasant, you have the library there, which could be a plus, right? As you think through what you're working on, what other supports ideally sort of exist in the area, right? Are there other community groups that could maybe help get folks out? Those are certainly things that I would be thinking about. Loafers Lake as well, just the way it's set up with a rec center there too. Like what sort of supports are in the area that could be conducive to pulling off whatever project you'd like to put forward. So for these, the programming proposals are slightly different. So we're looking ultimately for interconnected weekly programming that's held over the course of 2 months for a total of up to 8 weeks. So these are the sites that are supported by Ontario Trillium Foundation, and that's why they're a little bit slightly different. Obviously, again, looking at last year's success and expanding the program. So we'd be looking at weekly activations scheduled for Thursday or Friday evenings, running from July to August. I think you have some flexibility in as far as like what you define as evening, but I think you probably imagine this as something that folks are maybe doing after dinner. And then again, and I will sort of stress this because it's really a requirement for us to our funders for each of these different sites too, is there being some sort of a final event. So something that I would say, a lot of the BOW opportunities don't necessarily require sort of a finished product, obviously a workshop or whatever it might be, but this really does come with sort of a moment at the end, I would say, for a celebration or a temporary artwork or a culminating sort of performance. We're going to also put together like a larger sort of celebration, but really just maybe thinking through how does your project like build up to something. Again, lots of flexibility on what that means, but just I would encourage you to think about that. Again, programming that provides multiple opportunities to engage and participate. Again, a general, all ages, multi-ethnic audience, including one or more art forms. So again, this could be an opportunity to perhaps work with an artist who's in another discipline, or maybe one chapter of your work, sets the stage for one thing and then builds up to something else. So there's lots of room for, like play is a word that kind of comes to mind for all of this. Like I think we're interested in just ways that you can take an idea like roots in the park and what that means and make it something that brings out different folks to kind of engage with nature in new ways. Budget includes payment to the artist or artists, materials, equipment rentals, insurance, and anything else sort of associated with your project. Once we select the different projects, obviously we're here to be a support and a resource and work through your budget or work through your sort of questions, and help you get set up. So for both of these sites, for sites 2 and 3, we're looking again July to August is sort of the container for these. And the budget available is up to $2,250 for an artist payment, for one or more individuals, and insurance for 4 weeks. So you could apply and say, I would just like to pitch 4 weeks, or you could say, I'd like to take on the full 8 weeks, and that's up to $4,500. And again, for the artist fee, don't stress about how you sort of are breaking that down necessarily for yourself. Like that is sort of standard. Obviously, we're looking to Carfax and like a rough understanding of how that works out for the 8 weeks. But ultimately, that is dedicated to like your labor, your time, your energy, and your ideas. Up to $1,500 for supplies and materials. Again, you don't have to spend that full amount, but you're welcome to ask for that full amount, and it's there for you. And then up to $1,200 for equipment rentals. So what that could mean, art, whatever it might be, equipment rentals could be anything from speakers, right, to a temporary pop-up screen or whatever it might be. And again, we can kind of ideate and brainstorm a bit more, but we really wanted to make sure that this was a program that was well resourced. As far as who can apply, this program is open to all Brampton and GTA-based professional artists, not-profit arts and culture organizations or artist collectives that are working on a not-for-profit basis. We really do prioritize folks that are here in Brampton and have a strong connection to Brampton. So I'd encourage you just to make that clear in your application. Sometimes it can be hard for us if we're unsure if somebody is actually still in Brampton or where they live. So I think being able to speak to that, again, a focus is really on offering something special to the community here locally. So being able to speak to like why that matters to you. As far as professional artist, we follow the Ontario Arts Council's definition, which is someone who's developed skills through training or practice, is recognized by other artists working in the same tradition, and has a bit of a history of presentation or publication, and seeks payment for their work and is actively sort of practicing it. So there's a few different components to that, but really just being able to show that this is something that is a big part of your life, and that you are making work, sharing work, you're engaging with other artists and looking to get paid for your work. I'm going to pass it back to Katie now just to share some ideas or examples. A big inspiration for us, I would say, for this project was Art in the Parks. I'm just like really proud of Katie and I, and a bow of this being something that we had pitched to the city long ago, and then just sort of managed to make happen to ourselves. Why can't we have art in the parks here? So we've done our own version, Parkscapes, but Katie's got some examples to sort of share and hopefully help you sort of dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think in particular for this year, with the material and equipment budget portion there available through our grant, really offers a lot of possibility. So these are some examples that I've put here. I'm just taking a look at the chat. Will this video or info be available? Yes. So we'll be sharing the slides and the recording of this Zoom. So you'll be able to have those as resources. So I won't talk too much about these examples. When you get the link to the PDF slides, it's the toolkit for Art in the Parks Toronto is linked here, and you can go and have a look at some of these examples in particular. But this Shadowland Theatre was a week-long residency in I forget which park, but they were working with all kinds of community and youth throughout the week leading up to a final performance that they had done. So that's a possibility from a performing arts lens. Another example here on a experience, also involving lots of different community members. And then we have another example here that was more lo-fi, which was just like a weekly meeting to read, write, and recite poetry. So folks are just bringing blankets, as you can see. I know some of the other examples, they had like chairs, but mostly folks are bringing some of their own supplies. So it can be pretty, low key. It doesn't need to be anything in particular. But all of these examples are linked. So if you did want to follow up later, feel free to take a closer look.
I'm happy to run through the selection criteria just to give you a bit of a sense of what folks will be looking for. So BOW staff will be a part of the selection committee. TRCA, Toronto Regional Conservation Authority, will be on the selection panel as well as local Brampton artists. So those of you that aren't familiar, like we always involve community on who decides who gets the opportunities, because I think that's number one important. And a lot of the time, I'd say even BOW staff's role is really just to jump in if there are questions around like feasibility, like is that actually possible, X, Y, Z, but wanting community to decide what community would like to see. So to break things down, we have a total application score of 55, and it's weighted most heavily on program proposal. So quality and creativity of the proposal, the scope of it, making sure that it's feasible and realistic, making sure your budget is reflective of what's proposed. So if you say that you're going to make, a bunch of miniature items, do you have enough supplies to actually do that? Or are you overestimating? Like, I think the more that you can sort of ground your proposal in reality, and the more information is better than not enough. Audience is identified and appropriate, so making it clear that who you are hoping will come out. Again, we're hoping to have that be quite broad. Making sure that the program doesn't duplicate existing experiences. So I would say making sure that it's ideally something that we're not already seeing, that you probably haven't done before, I would say. I think it can be similar and certainly inspired by previous projects, but if it was an exact copy of something that you've done before, I think, I don't know how you feel, Katie, but I feel like the hope would really be for this to be something that, folks can't already or haven't already sort of done in the summer in Brampton. But
Yeah, I think it's really just speaking to if recreation is already doing the exact same program, we're looking for something unique to offer Brampton that they can't get through, a visual arts Brampton program or something like that.
yeah, that's yeah, I think that's better articulated than I did. I wouldn't want Joy, for example, obviously you work in zines, doesn't mean that you can't have zine zine parties in the park. It's just more like, how is this a bit unique and as Katie said, not something that the city is already offering. And then valuable access to arts and culture opportunities for the public and for Brampton creatives, right? Like obviously so much of what we do is really focused on supporting the local arts community. The general public is even more so a focus for the city of Brampton, but for ourselves, it's about building up the arts sector. Slightly less weighted is artistic experience. So just how confident can the selection panel be that you can pull it off, what you're saying you're going to do? So do you have experience facilitating programs? Make sure that you articulate that. If you do you have a commitment to sort of your practice and show that you're active? So being able to just sort of speak to, here's who I am, here's what I've done before, here's why it matters to me, I think is a big part of it, because I think that's often where sometimes applications can fall short, is that it's just like, this is an amazing idea, but I don't know if this person can actually do that. And I think it's also okay to include in your application, this is something new for me, and that's why I'm working with XYZ, collaborator to do something new. Community engagement, a demonstrated commitment to supporting the creative community in Brampton, an understanding of the neighborhood that you're working in, and then again, work experience, personal outlook, or lived experience connected to BOW. So it's very easy to just go on our website and look at sort of our values, our mission, and just sort of explain why this would make sense for BOW to be involved. Again, I think the most successful applications will be one that speak to having done a bit of research into the community and its history and how they'll be involved in it, right? I think that makes me think of the phrase like nothing about us without us, right? So going into a community and sort of doing a project about them without involving them is not a good call. So yeah, that's the general overview of the selection panel. Project timeline. So the call is open now, as you are aware. It's up on our website. The deadline is March 15th. I'd say we're on a pretty tight timeline, so we actually can't realistically push that back too much. So please do get in your applications. Again, Katie and I are available to talk through your ideas or brainstorm a little bit. I certainly would rather you do that. I can only speak for myself. Than you sort of put something in quickly rushed that unfortunately falls short. Whereas if you just talked it through with us a little bit, we can kind of steer you in the right direction. We'll let folks know as quickly as possible, likely early April, and then we'll give folks April to June to kind of get your act together and get ready for all of the programming. And obviously we'll start getting ready to ramp up marketing and program and sort of announcing it. And then program delivery, again, depends on the different projects, will be from June to August of this summer. So moves pretty quickly. Successful proposal. So the successful proposal leader or leaders will work with BOW to sort of finalize details of your project. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if every project that is selected has one or two little things that need to be figured out. And I think that's okay. Obviously, as much of it can be sort of confirmed, the better. But confirm that everything is on the same page, connect all of the folks that are doing different proposals together at some point. And then we'll have an artist agreement. We'll make sure that you're covered for insurance. I'd say we'll work with you on that. So don't be intimidated if you're worried about insurance. We can help you figure that out. And then finalizing the event description so that Gardenia and the marketing folks have everything they need. And then we'll be actively promoting the workshops through the newsletter, website, and social media. But I will stress that, I think a strong application will also mention how you're going to get folks out for this. So the successful applicant is required to actively promote the program by working with us to create and follow a promo plan, making sure that you're sharing the information through your own networks and dedicated social media posts, and then acknowledging BOW and funder support in all marketing materials and events. So I will say that, as a team, where we get disappointed sometimes in projects is where it feels like we're the only ones doing all the heavy lifting on sort of the marketing. So it's really is a shared responsibility, making sure that you're also creating your own graphics to get it out there, and putting in that effort to send out invites and make sure folks show up. And then again, making sure that you give credit to BOW and also to our funders in all of that marketing material. But we're here to work with you on that and what makes the most sense.
Okay, so we'll take a moment now to look at the program website and the application form. So I'm going to open that up here. We'll talk through some key things to note in the application. So all of our open calls are here on our website. So we've got a couple of other calls open as well that you may be interested in taking a look at: grant writing and a photographer in residence. But for us, we are looking at Parkscapes. So this is really all of the information that we've covered together, but I would encourage you to take a second look and make sure you've got it all and it makes sense, and you'll be able to include what's needed in an application. As we scroll through and get towards the bottom, we will find our application through JotForm. So here is the application itself. So a little bit of information at the top around what the program is, the timelines. Like all of our calls, contact information, pretty straightforward. There's a voluntary self-identification that you can choose to do. This sort of helps us ensure equitable distribution across all of our programming, but it is anonymous and not a reflection of the application. You're only able to propose a program at one site. So if you choose East, doing your application for, and you wouldn't be able to put in a second or third one for the other sites. Although you do have the option here to say, if you don't get selected for your preferred park, would you be open to us working with you on Chinguacousy Park if you would be open and amenable to that. So here would be the space where you're talking to us about who you are as an artist, your biography, some of your training, your experience, why you for this opportunity. If there are any additional biographies or team leaders within your organization or collective, you would add them here. And then your proposed activities. So this is space for you to let us know if you're choosing to do 4 bits of programming or the full 8 weeks, or if you're looking at Eastbourne Park and you're doing up to 3 activations. This would be a place to be clear, concise, and let us know exactly what those programs would look like. Then we get into the budget. So just keeping in mind that there are 2 separate budgets that are kind of similar, but a bit different for Site 1 and Site 2 and 3. And in this budget, use any of those collaborators, materials, equipment rentals, thinking about your insurance and any other fees that may come along with your project. Could look like Carfax if you're a visual artist. You can also, I think many folks use code Carfax across a lot of disciplines. There are other bodies that set rates for different artistic disciplines. And so here sit out whatever you would prefer. Then some space to let us know in which artistic discipline you're applying for, any social and then if you were successful, we would add it in any of the boxes above. Michael's going to plug in my computer because it's going to die. Any other additional information that you may have missed that you think we should know? And then lastly, and also really importantly, is information for support materials. So you must submit two. You have space to submit more if you would like. So I would make sure that any support materials are related to your artistic practice, to the work that you're proposing. It could be an artist CV, images of your work, a portfolio, a video, an audio sample. It could be a letter of reference. It doesn't need to be. There's many pieces of material that you could attach. And I would say to make sure that they help, like the budget, tell the story of your application, that the selection panel would be able to see these materials and immediately make a connection as to why you've chosen them and why they're connected to your project and all of the work that you've proposed to be doing. And then that's it. So yeah, I would say application, most important to be clear and concise, to leave out any filler. I would maybe make a version of this on Word and share it with friends and family or another artist in a different discipline and see if they can understand it and it makes sense. I find that to be really helpful. And then you can make adjustments from there. So that's the application. And then I think just lastly, we have our contact information. I won't leave this slide up. I'll put our emails in the chat for us to look at, and then I'll stop sharing. And I'll open up the floor now for folks. And yeah, we welcome questions about any of the sites, budget, application. If you had an idea that you wanted to speak out loud and were curious about, we'd love to chat.
One thing I will mention is just that we are finding more and more in written applications like ChatGPT. And so I'll just be upfront to mention that like you can use AI and ChatGPT for whatever you'd like to do, but at least I'd recommend giving it like an overview, right? Because we're seeing more and more folks that are using it in a way that actually there's errors in it or it's very like clear. So leaving that a bit broad, you do you, but I think it's something that we're just noticing time and time again, and some people are, actually, despite pitching very different projects, have extremely similar writing because we realize that they've used it in that way. So, yeah, I just put that out there.
About exhibition, is it going to be a temporary exhibition? This thing, like what I'm thinking of is proposing cyanotype scrolls for each workshop and then hanging them in Eldorado Park. That would be my side because that's one of our favorite parks and we have spent a lot of time there. So, and I've done big cyanotype projects in that park, knowing the space and light and things. But at the same time, doing fabric in an open space, an installation for a temporary installation is okay, but if it's going to be how the exhibition is going to be, that's my question.
I would say for site one, which is Eastbourne Park, that has the fencing, and we're looking for a temporary installation, particularly around that fencing. For the other two sites, being Chinguacousy and then the Choose Your Own Adventure, so it could be Eldorado. We don't have any plans to do any kind of installation, so that would be up to the artist to figure out, and you would need to be working with city folks, with park folks to be doing the research and work with them to get, if it's a permit that you may need or some kind of agreement or understanding from the city that you could and would be able to display your cyanotype work or whatever it is somewhere officially in any capacity. Because for us at BOW, we wouldn't have any of those things in place, but you would be welcome to explore that for yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, not to dissuade you, but I think to be like realistic about the way the city often works, right, is it can be difficult to get permission for like a permanent installation of, say, cyanotypes. And I think that's why when we speak about like a celebration moment or an event, perhaps, it's, I think, more easy for us to imagine displaying or hanging them for a few hours and everyone getting to look at them. And I think we'd probably, to be frank, go a bit rogue with you and just get them up. But then I think we'd probably have to take them down at the end of the day. So, but again, the city has public art staff, other team members that you could. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying in that case, fabric would be okay. as a medium. If it's there just for a couple of hours and there is a nice bridge and a river flowing underneath. So.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
for some of you may have like, again, in your equipment and supplies, you want easels if you're having other work that you're like, okay, how do I put this up temporarily? Like other things to consider. Lewis in the chat, just the 8-week program and then weekend activity, those times are agreed on or can be open?
So for site 2, which is Chinguacousy, we've looked at a Thursday and a Friday evening for programming. And that's specifically because on weekends at Chinguacousy, there's really limited to no parking available. So for that site, Chinguacousy in particular, we are looking at a Thursday or Friday evening, like late afternoon, evening, that can be flexible. I think we would be open if you had a strong argument for only being available on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, say, you could make a case for that. The same goes for Eldorado Park, for instance. Parking on weekends is really difficult. So that's sort of why we've looked at weekends for those, or sorry, weekdays for sites 2 and 3. Although for final celebration, we could look at a weekend. Okay, I see Joy, your hand's up.
Yes, I had a couple questions. So about accessibility and inclusivity. So if the activity involves like some instructions or puzzles, what should we kind of think about what to do? Like maybe translating some of those or having somebody around to help translate, something like that? Because I know because at Eastbourne whenever we go to early on, there are a lot of people who don't know how to speak English or are very they're still learning it. So I want them to be able to get involved, and if my activity involves some puzzles or something like that, then that's something to think about, I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that would be a really nice consideration, just like having that awareness and understanding of the community and the primary languages in that neighborhood, which probably aren't predominantly English. So yeah, I would certainly keep that in mind. And I think that could be something that would make your application strong, is having those considerations and demonstrating knowledge of the community and who lives there and their languages and how they like to communicate. And so you could use some of your budget perhaps to have those, I don't know, other language speakers there as facilitators to support you, or whatever that would look like an artist who speaks Hindi or Punjabi that you also work with and they can do instruction in that language, or you're working with a translation service for printed materials and you put that in your budget as well. So I think those are all really nice things to think about. And even for marketing materials, thinking about language for in that sense, and then working with us as well. So allocating your budget like that. Mm-hmm.
And stemming from that, I was thinking of doing either Eastbourne or applying for Eastbourne or Chinguacousy, because it's such a large area, and if I want to cover that area, will volunteers be available, or is that something that we have to think about with the budget? And also just
Yes,
in the event.
there will be volunteers and likely a staff. Staff wouldn't be available to attend every single program, but I think can be relied on for like a final celebration. Ideally, we would be able to have volunteers for you at every event that you're doing for each of the Parkscapes events across all 3 sites. Not necessarily a guarantee, kind of based on availability, but I think you could sort of rely on that. And that if you felt it was like vital to have that type of support, I might think about building it into your budget, or at least putting it on your applications for our awareness that you would need, like you would be requiring at least 2 BOW volunteers at your engagement. And then from our end, we can say, okay, great. This is a really nice offering. We would love to bring this to Brampton. And then we'll, on our back end, work to ensure that we have, that staffing or volunteers for you as important to your program.
2 other questions, if that's okay. For the events, is there it's required to have like a registration every time, or is it just like people can just drop in? But
not necessarily. you wouldn't need to have registration. Drop-in would be fine. I think we would need to understand how you would go about ensuring that you're going to get drop-in folks. So that's postering at the local library, going to the rec center. Like, how would you be like ensuring a drop-in attendance without doing registration, which I think is totally feasible. But we just need to know that you've thought about that.
Yeah. I think
And
it
in
could be a
terms of
situation where, oh, sorry, Joy, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it could be something like registration is available, but not mandatory necessary. So drop-ins welcome. But I think it's also useful for you to be able to capture that information from folks to be able to invite them to your final celebration, right?
yeah, and also in terms of supplies, just to get an idea.
Mm-hmm.
But my last question for now is, I guess it'll come up more as the events come closer. But like weather, if an event is scheduled for that date, but the weather is bad, is it like canceled or is it going to be rescheduled for the next week? Because I know the other, like one of them is 8 weeks. So
I think we'd work with you on a case by case basis. Like, I don't think, if due to unforeseen weather events, it ends up being 7 weeks instead of 8, nobody will get penalized for that. I think we'd probably work together and say, oh, is there another week that we can maybe do 2 sessions or whatever it might be, is my inclination. But I think it's kind of a case by case basis, coming from a place of like, understanding that I would include in your plan, if you're able to, a rain plan, right? So saying I'm planning on doing XYZ outside on a bunch of blankets. If for whatever reason it's raining that day, we'll be moving the event, inside or virtual or whatever it might be.
And thinking about your materials and supplies budget, would you want to purchase 2 tents or a tent so that some programming could still happen through rain? Like, thinking of some of that contingency. Sometimes it may just be like, okay, it needs to be canceled because it's cyanotype, like a DT's project, and we need sun, and then just can't do it. But thinking of some of those other bits and pieces, would you book a rec center as backup? And those are things that, working with us, like, we would come up with together too.
Sorry, just one more question. For the 8-week one, so it's 8 weeks of events. Is the 8th week the final showcase, or is the final showcase a separate day?
So I'll share, not to get everyone confused, but we've been doing some back and forth with our funder and the city, and permitting has been a little bit confusing, but we have now selected and booked a picnic shelter at Chinguacousy Park on August 27th, which is either a Thursday or Friday. Just gonna take a look. Thursday, August 27th, for the evening from 4 to 8 p.m. And so that will be the final celebration date for each of the sites. On our end, we just felt that was the easiest way to do it, to book that site, to lock it in, to have the appropriate permit. That shelter space can accommodate up to 200 people. So there's lots of space, and we would be working with each of the selected Parkscapes artists separately and together on the culminating celebration.
Thank you so much.
A big closing party, at least in my mind. That's where somebody who, has made it, whatever it might be, but again, all the different sort of projects coming together for a final sort of closing celebration, where we'll invite the funders, government officials, others to kind of like celebrate everything we've done. I think if you want to, at your own site, like having had many repeat folks, I would consider maybe having like a nice moment for everyone in advance, maybe of the bigger one, but that's totally up to you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
You're welcome.
Never say sorry for questions. If you're thinking it, then other people are wondering the same thing. So, yeah.
I had a question.
Great.
Thank you for sharing and giving so many insight, because it gave a lot better idea on how to plan the project. This would be my first time to actually write a grant and present a project. I have been writing to the previous calls as well. I do have a strong conviction towards the idea, but as you said, that the more clear it is, the more understandable it is, it's better. So I was seeking some kind of a guidance towards the grant writing. How can I connect with you? I know you've shared your email addresses. I could write to that. And I had another question also, that I did hear that the possibilities seem to be endless, but are there any particular things that we should be staying away from? Like, I work with mindful art and movement, and I usually work with three age groups: kids, adults, and the elderlies. And each age group has a certain things which we need to be careful about. Like for kids, we would want like the area to be restricted and not near water or some, water body. For elderlies, maybe we might need chairs or tables or something like that. So is that okay if we arrange for that? Will we get help towards that? Especially for elderlies, they will need seating arrangement. So these two questions.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are all things that you can consider in your supplies budget too, right? And these are also items that folks can keep. We're not going to ask for anything you bought back, but say you need budget for folding chairs and tables as an example. I mean, I think ideally making things that are, part of, I would say, a hope for the project is this like intergenerational like learning and art making. So maybe it's not specifically just for youth or for elderly or other groups. I would say that if it was a project that you pitched that was more focused towards like children, I would want to see like plans around like safety concerns, making sure like waivers, things like that. So I think doesn't mean that that's a no, but I think there would be a natural sort of just wanting to make sure that all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And then as sort of we mentioned, like reach out to us if you're looking for advice on your grant. I'd say just to everyone, like often there's a large number of applications and folks really don't have a ton of time to look through them. I mean, I think people are detailed and careful, but really making sure that you're cutting to the chase, frankly, and like what's sort of the headline of your project? What is the impact? What are you trying to do? If it's too convoluted, then I think often for a selection panel member, it's like, I don't even really understand this, or like, this isn't 8 weeks. This feels like it's 16 weeks. Like, how is, and I think, again, when they're going through many applications, that makes it difficult. Say strong like images as well. Like people will read the writing, but if you have strong support material, I think often people will look to that just to try and understand if they are confused. So the more professional, clear, and impactful that can be, the better. And again, to the word limits that are there are just a guide as well. So don't feel like you have to use 200 words if you can actually get your point across effectively and meaningfully in 100, So, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah.
I think the only other thing I would add is sort of what Joy was asking as well, was around, so say you are having tables and chairs and you need all of that set up. I would try to be as self-sufficient as possible so that we can have volunteers, but not necessarily a guarantee. So let's say you have, I don't know, I'm making this up. You have 100 tables you've said you need to set up, but you haven't put in any additional support for yourself in your budget or talked about it anywhere else. We'll be thinking, okay, how would you be able to set up 100 tables in this amount of time, and those types of connections. So just making sure that that's thought through as well.
I think to Peggy's point, really, there is value in a project that we are confident is like self-sufficient, just because if a volunteer cancels and you're so reliant on that, and so I think being confident that we can be there as an additional support, but that the chosen folks are, have it covered.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense. Right.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I encourage you all to share the opportunity with friends and other folks that might be interested or have a fit. I know that might seem like, oh, we're just inviting competition, but actually it's like maybe even going through that process with somebody else is, you know, interesting. Maybe there ends up being a collaboration that you'd rather, because example, 8 weeks could be a lot, but maybe if you work with somebody else, you can divide it up or alternate weeks. Yeah, and I think if there are no other questions, we can say goodbye. Seeing none, I think we'll leave it there. Like a big thank you for taking time to come and run through everything with us. I hope it was useful. Again, we're only an email away. Please make sure you get your applications in on time. And yeah, just a big thank you. I encourage you to sort of dream big with it, right? Like you can do anything in a park. So yeah, there's no ideas are too weird. I'm going a bit rogue here, but you know, I think again, look at other examples. It's like it can really be. You want to rent a giant screen and showcase something like that's doable. There's lots of potential. Okay. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. A huge thank you again. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
You.